Good evening, everyone, and welcome. As the person who used to force everyone to listen to the recording of Ernie Harwell reciting the voice of the turtle every year in management meetings, I'm delighted to welcome you tonight for Baseball and the American Ideal. If you don't know me, my name is Laura Crayley. I am the department head for Adult and Teen Services here at the library, and we're one of the folks who helps bring in presenters like Jose. So thank you all for coming down. I will be around and about in the rear of the room if you have questions or need help with anything during the presentation. If you need the restroom, you're going to go out this door to the left and then make a very swift right. After that, if you have questions, concerns, anything like that, you can come and find me. Otherwise, you can enjoy Jose Guzman's presentation.
All right, welcome. I appreciate everyone coming out tonight. My name is Jose Guzman. I actually work for Bloomfield Township. I'm the Grants and Engagement Coordinator, but I'm also a diehard baseball fan, so I'm glad to have this opportunity to talk to everyone here about my experience in baseball, and I do hope you can learn from me, and I certainly hope I can learn from you. And if you haven't had the chance, I did bring some of my baseball cards here. They're going to be sitting out the front. They'll be here all night. Again, just a small part of my collection. I'll talk about more when we get to that point in the speech. But to get started, I just want to see how much this audience really knows. So, this is my favorite baseball trivia question, and let's see how good this audience is. Are we ready? Here we go. In baseball, name the 5 ways that a player can reach first base without hitting the ball with their bat. Yell them out. That's one.
Third strike, it gets past the catcher.
That's the first 3. There's 2 more.
Interference.
What kind? Catcher's interference. That's good. And there's 1 more.
Interference by audience. Intentional.
That's the same as a regular walk.
Okay, good idea, though. Oh, yeah.
I'll give you a hint. Notice that I said player. I did not say batcher or hitter.
A pinch runner.
Who said that? There you go, pinch runner. All right, congratulations. That's a Baby Ruth for you, my friend. Catch. All right, well, again, that's like my favorite baseball trivia of all time. And again, I know a lot of people, hey, that last one's a trick. Well, come on. But hey, don't we feel just a little bit better about our baseball knowledge right now? So, to start, some housekeeping business. This talk is presented by the authority of me, and it may not be produced, retransmitted in any form, and the accounts and descriptions may not be disseminated without my express written consent. Now, right off the bat, this will be a fairly informal talk. You see, I'm not an academic. You know what, that's a bad choice. There we go, much better. I am not an academic, and nor do I pretend to be one. I am married to an academic, so I do my best to do research and I never generalize, but me being married to an academic does not make me an academic, in the same way that my wife being married to me does not make her a sports Jeopardy champion, which I am. And while this is my story about my lifelong love of baseball, I do hope that it can be your story, and I certainly hope you would share your information with me as well, whether you love baseball, like it, or you just put up with someone because they love it. So this talk will have 4 sections. Well, first we'll talk about my initial love for baseball and the players that I followed from an early age. We'll talk about how that love of baseball turned into a lifelong love and collection of baseball cards. How baseball to me is the American ideal, welcoming all, a true melting pot for all wanting to play their part in the American game. And finally, how my love for movies also folded into baseball via baseball movies. And if you pay attention, there may just be some more candy. So to begin, I was born and raised Long Island, New York. Right here, a very small town called Selden, right in the middle, suburbia, USA, and that's me. No, I have no idea what happened. Anyway, both of my parents are Puerto Rican, and all four of my grandparents are Puerto Rican, which means I'm approximately 2,000% Puerto Rican, but more importantly, 100% American. And from a very young age, I knew the importance of taking pride in my Puerto Rican heritage. From the music, to the food, to the celebratory nature of all things Puerto Rican, I knew there was something special about my heritage, and it was always a source of honor and strength. But as an American, I also recognized the need to embrace this society and find a way to contribute, and more importantly, fit in. And I found that through baseball. Now, I'm from New York, so yes, I'm a Yankee fan. Get it out, come on, get it out, come on, you'll feel better. Look, get it out of your system. I mean, you're born with the team you root for. It's like, trying to, will yourself into a family that is gonna raise you. It's just not gonna happen. So I get into baseball, I'm a Yankee fan. And from an early age, there were two players in particular who began my journey to lifetime fandom. The first was this man, Reggie Jackson. Does anybody know what his nickname was? That's right, Mr. October. Does anybody know who gave him that nickname? Reggie Jackson. You think? No, it was not self-proclaimed. It's actually a quote, and it was a teammate of Reggie's who was the catcher and the captain. Right here. Congratulations, you just won a Reggie bar. There you go. Those are recently created bars. Those are not from 1978. There's a company that makes them. They're awesome. So yes, Thurman Munson actually gave him that nickname. So the story was that before Reggie came to New York, he had won 3 World Series with the Oakland A's, and he was even the World Series MVP in 1973. But when he came to New York, he kind of struggled in his first postseason with the Yankees. Against Kansas City in the ALCS, he only hit $125, and in the first 2 games of the World Series, he was only hitting 1 for 6. So reporters were nagging Thurman about Reggie, and Thurman said, well, Reggie's struggling and would like to be doing better. Billy, the Yankee manager, Billy Martin, probably just doesn't realize that Reggie is a regular Mr. October. Now, some saw that remark as support, some saw it as a dig, since Thurman and Reggie had a very contentious relationship, but that moniker of Mr. October would stick. Reggie would go on to hit 5 home runs in the next 4 games, including 3 in the deciding Game 6. He would win his 2nd World Series MVP, as well as the first of 2 World Series with the New York Yankees. And that was my very first baseball idol. He finished his career with 563 home runs. At the time, that made him 6th all time. Today, he's 14th. And Reggie talked a big game, but he backed it up. He was everything that me, a slightly uncoordinated, kind of scrawny Puerto Rican kid, dreamed he could be. Now, does anybody know Reggie's middle name? All right, I'll give it to you. It's Martinez. So think about that. I had somehow subconsciously picked a baseball idol who was also Puerto Rican without even thinking about it. Reggie's dad was half Puerto Rican, so Reggie is 1/4 Puerto Rican. Who knew? Now, in addition to Reggie, I had another idol, and I'd be very impressed if anyone gets this one, and it was not a Yankee, believe it or not. Well, we'll get there. But actually, my other idol at the time was Mike Schmidt. So you might ask, how does a diehard Yankee fan like me, growing up in Long Island, New York, become a Mike Schmidt fan? Well, pure luck. At the time, we didn't have cable, and we definitely didn't have any sports packages. But I was living on a very special part of Long Island that had access to TV6 Philadelphia so that I could actually watch Philadelphia Philly home games. So when I was not watching the Yankees on WPIX Channel 11, I was watching Michael Jack Schmidt in the prime of his career. Now, as much as I loved watching Reggie hit, he wasn't much of a fielder. But with Mike Schmidt, you got the whole package. You got the home run power, and he was a 10-time Gold Glove winner at third base. It was like watching a magician, sleights of hand, turning line drives and easy outs into easy hits into easy outs. He was amazing. But another thing that caught my eye about Mike Schmidt had to be those colorful Phillies uniforms. They were so classic. I mean, as much as I love the Yankees and their trademark pinstripes, they can be a little bland. Need a little color, That really caught my eye. And hey, check out that mustache. That is a man's man. I didn't know it at the time, but Mike Schmidt was my very first man crush, soon to be followed by Tom Selleck. Yes, I definitely had a type. And here's another connection to Mike Schmidt that I did not know of at the time. But later on, Mike Schmidt talked about how when he first started playing, he was struggling with his swing. He was, in the minor leagues, he was the next star in the making, but he had kind of a subpar rookie season. So he was recommended to go play winter ball in Puerto Rico and see what he could do to maybe get some kinks out. And he talked about how one day he just started tinkering with his stance, and he started working on trying to go more back up the middle and to right center, which is just a great approach to have. And, next thing you know, he's a Hall of Famer 15 years later. Now, someone else who was kind of mentioned, who actually was from Puerto Rico and was kind of a superstar from day one, was this man, Roberto Clemente. Now, you would think, growing up in a Puerto Rican household, I would have been raised to be taught that Clemente was king. He was a 5-tool player, had a career batting average of .317. He won 12 Gold Gloves in right field. He was an MVP, World Series MVP, and 2-time World Series champion. But for the same reason that the majority of the country didn't revere Clemente, I didn't either. He played in Pittsburgh, all right? Not exactly a big market, so I never heard of him. But later in life, I learned more about this amazing player and humanitarian. I do recommend this outstanding biography by David Moranis that highlights what Clemente meant to the game of baseball and to the people of Puerto Rico, and he doesn't sugarcoat anything. And for those of you who don't know, Clemente collected his 3,000th hit in the last game of the 1972 season. That would be the last game he played. On New Year's Eve 1972, he was killed in a plane crash while trying to deliver aid to victims of a recent hurricane in Nicaragua. He was truly dedicated to helping others, which is probably why Major League Baseball created the Roberto Clemente Award to honor players that are also dedicated to service and humanitarian efforts. Clemente died 2 years before I was born, probably another reason for the radio silence in my home. Now, something I did learn from the Moranis biography, Clemente did everything full out. He writes, when Clemente ran, it seemed not so much that he was trying to reach base, but as to escape some unspeakable terror. I just find that endearing. I always love players who hustle. So I grow up, I'm idolizing Reggie and Mike Schmidt, but I can't play like them. And don't get me wrong, I tried. In fact, Reggie was a left-handed hitter. I was a natural righty. I learned to hit lefty just so I could try to be like Reggie, but it just wasn't the same. I was a decent fielder. I couldn't hit with any power to save my life. And this was through my formative years where I played Little League, junior high, and high school ball. But that was it. No scouts came to check me out, but hey, I had fun and I felt like I was making my contribution to society. I did resurrect my quote-unquote playing career about 20 years ago when I was playing softball for my company's softball team, and that's me with most of the cartilage in both of my knees. So I would never have a career in baseball, but it wouldn't mean that I wouldn't have my own card. Look, Jose Guzman. It's uncanny, see? They look alike, right? Yeah. Yeah. So yes, this is Jose Guzman, the baseball player. No relation. For those of you who don't know, in Puerto Rican culture, Jose Guzman is pretty much the equivalent of John Smith. So leave it to my dad to give me the most boring name in the world, which was technically his name because he's senior and I'm junior. So anyway, this is Jose Guzman, the baseball player. Not particularly remarkable. He pitched for about 10 seasons with both the Texas Rangers and the Chicago Cubs, but he was never an all-star. He never got to play in a World Series, but what he did collect was a lifetime full of baseball cards, which I used to hand out as my own business cards when I was a kid. True story. And now we're on to the next part of my speech, which is my lifelong love of baseball cards. So, in addition to being in love with watching players like Reggie, Mike Schmidt, and countless others play, from a young age, I was always obsessed with stats. And it's a good thing because it's probably the only thing that got me through grade school math. I loved reading box scores and to see how players were doing. I liked seeing batting averages and home runs and RBIs for hitters. I liked seeing wins, strikeouts, and ERA for pitchers. But it wasn't enough. I really wanted to see cumulative year-end stats. So back before the internet, baseball fans like me that were obsessed with stats had only one way to get their fix: the back of baseball cards. And these cards would come out every February, which just happened to be my birthday month. So while I always hated having a cold weather birthday month, I heated up thinking about getting the latest baseball cards hot off the press. And in addition to the cards themselves, does anybody remember what special treat came with them? Yes, that horrible, horrible cardboard type gum. The many stomach aches I endured, but it was worth it. So starting when I was about 7, my father and I had this tradition where he would take me to the local card store and he'd buy me a box of baseball cards. And it would always be on a Sunday, and I would take the entire day to go through every single pack, rip them open, organize them, eating every piece of gum along the way. And then the fun part was, if I didn't finish, I was always allowed to take the next day off from school so that I could. And I truly love that tradition. But what's important to know of baseball cards is that it's truly a sensory experience, you know? I mean, you get that, you open up a pack of baseball cards and you get that picture of the player. Hopefully it's an action shot, and you get that fine finish on the front, and then you get that kind of rough cardboard feel on the back, and then you get kind of that smoky aroma because the cards are packed together. And then if you're truly lucky, there'll be a piece of gum stuck to one of the cards. And then you'll take that off, and then there'll be like kind of gum residue left on the card, you know, and you never clean that off because that's like a mark of excellence, you know. Now, I should mention that my father and I had kind of a tumultuous relationship. There were a lot of broken promises growing up, but this was the one tradition that he always backed up, and this is something that I will always be forever grateful that he gave me this opportunity. Of course, later on in life, when I started to foot the bill for my own cards, I quickly realized how expensive they are, and that baseball cards really are an addiction, but it's an addiction I can live with. So let's take a look at some of the first cards that I got my hands on from the Topps 1981 series. And I do hope it's okay if I come out and talk. I hope you can hear me. So from the first series, we've got Reggie Jackson and Mike Schmidt, obviously my two idols. We've got Rod Carew, we've got Dave Parker. Thankfully, Dave Parker was recently inducted into the Hall of Fame. It was posthumous, and that's very unfortunate, but I'm glad at least his family can enjoy that honor. We got Ricky Henderson, we got Jim Rice. Jim Rice, I hated this SOB growing up. I hated him because he played for the Red Sox. But it's funny because when you get older, you start to recognize the rivalry and you really start to respect the people on the other side of the diamond. And I've got nothing but love for Jim Rice, and I'm very glad that he is in the Hall of Fame because he deserves that. Jim Palmer, Dale Murphy, and of course, Dale Murphy is definitely, thank you. Jim Palmer, Dale Murphy. Dale Murphy is someone who I consider a Hall of Famer, so I hope he gets that honor someday. George Brett, Nolan Ryan. And then we got J.R. Richard and Dwight Evans. J.R. Richard, for those that don't know, one of the greatest what-if stories in the history of baseball. He had this amazing career for 4 or 5 seasons, and then he had a stroke. And while he was able to recover, he obviously was not the same player after that. But for 4 or 5 years, he was just this amazing fireballer on the same staff as Nolan Ryan. So imagine trying to play in that series. And then you have Dwight Evans. Now, does anybody see anything a little weird about Dwight Evans? No mustache, exactly. He was famous for having a mustache, and I guess this is one of the few times he decided to clean shave, but it's there for posterity on this card. So I'll just say, and this is an example. This is Hall of Famer Eddie Murray, and this is a sample card from the entire 1980s, and I wanted you all to see that so you can get a sense of how the cards changed over the course of the decade in terms of pictures and design and branding. And more importantly, that last card at the bottom right was from the 1989 series, which at the time was the last series I would collect for a while. When I turned 15, I don't know, I couldn't explain it, but baseball cards just didn't have the same interest as they used to. So I stopped collecting them for a while. All right. I grew up, I moved out to LA. And then around 2007, right before my parents were getting ready to sell their house, I got this care package in the mail. And that care package was full of all of these amazing baseball cards that I had collected. Oh, get back here. How did I do that? Oh, there we go. This care package had baseball cards that I hadn't seen in forever. Some of them were on display at the front of the room. Again, I had rookie cards of Cal Ripken, Tony Gwynn, Wade Boggs, Ryan Sandberg, and more. And I thought I was happy for the moment, but thanks to an amazing woman I decided to marry, my love for cards was reignited very shortly, starting in the early 2000s. In lieu of chocolate for Easter, my wife started buying me packs of baseball cards. And I was hooked all over again. So over the past 15 years, I have amassed and reamassed a pretty sizable collection of baseball cards. And because of the pandemic, I had time to get them organized. This is my basement. This is bookcase 1 of 4. I have no idea how many I have. It's probably somewhere in the range of 50 to 100,000, but thankfully they are pretty easy to store. And then the next question I usually get is, well, what's your most valuable card? Well, that's kind of up to interpretation. I mean, sentimental value, priceless, but in reality, I probably have about maybe 2 dozen cards worth about $100 each, maybe. You see, when it comes to a card's value, it's about scarcity and uniqueness. The cards that are worth the most tend to be the rare ones, the mistake ones. So let's take a look at a few of these. Is anyone familiar with this card, the Bill Ripken card? Does anybody know what is wrong with this picture? What? What'd you say? The bottom of the bat, yeah. So it's blacked out here, but when he was taking this picture, a teammate inexplicably put a naughty word on the knob of the bat, and they took the picture and they actually printed out about 500 cards before they realized what it was. And so there's different pricing depending on if you get the original, if you get this one, or then there's one where they were somehow able to like completely Photoshop it out. But again, this is a card that's worth money.
What was at the bottom of the card?
A very naughty word, which I'm not going to repeat. Then we have, this is the, what's going on here? Okay. Excuse me. We love technical difficulties. Okay, where are we? We are here. All right, let's fast forward a little bit. All right, so the next card I'm trying to show you is a card from a player named Sherry McGee. And hopefully this continues to work. There we go, Sherry McGee. All right, you probably won't be able to see it. And yes, that is actually Sherry McGee, although I kind of think he looks like Barry Williams from the Brady Bunch. But the problem with this card is they spelled his last name incorrectly. And the story is if you still have one of those early cards with the wrong name spelled, it's worth $100,000. Oh boy. Now we have this next card. And I've already given it away. So this is Juan Gonzalez, and yes, it got reversed. So he's not a lefty, and more importantly, that number is reversed. So the real card is supposed to look like that. But that original mistake card got printed. And then we have this card. Can anybody see what's wrong with this card? No name. There we go. And more importantly, that's Hall of Famer Frank Thomas. So, boy, that's maybe that was an omen.
These last two, how much are they valued?
It really depends. They fluctuate in value. I mean, I've heard anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20,000. So, but you know, that's more than any card I've ever had. And if I had one of these cards, I'd sell it immediately. Yes, I would. Exactly. So I don't have any of those cards, but I do have a few favorites I can talk about. The first one is this one. Surprise, surprise, it's Reggie Jackson. I found this card in 2015 for about 20 bucks, which I was happy to pony up. And it's significant for two reasons. One, it denotes Reggie's 1973 season, where he was both the regular season MVP and the World Series MVP. And just look at that uniform, it's gorgeous. And second, for good luck, I had that card in my pocket and I brought it with me to Los Angeles in 2016 when I was a contestant on Sports Jeopardy. And it was right there in my pocket when I won $7,000 as a one-day champion. Then there's another card, a card that was gifted to me. I had recently moved in with my girlfriend and she had gone to a flea market. And she comes home and she says, well, what do you think? Is this worth anything? A 1957 Billy Martin? Damn! And by the way, this means I'm in love with the girl. This doesn't mean I'm in love with the card, okay? You cannot marry a card. Well, not yet. So I still collect cards to this day, and I'm glad I do because it means I get to collect cards like this. We have Derek Jeter's very last regular season baseball card. I have Aaron Judge's rookie card, as well as a few other notable rookie cards here as well. And to me, it's less about the quantity, and it's more about just trying to complete the collection I already had and collect the cards that I think that are kind of cool. Now, more recently, I have started to go to card shows. In May of 2024, I had the privilege of attending the Fenway Card Show at Fenway, and I may be a Yankee fan, but to get the chance to stroll around Fenway and maybe get cursed at a little bit, it was a lot of fun. I mean, you literally get to walk around the park and go wherever you want except the field. And more importantly, I got to meet this gentleman. Does anybody have any idea who this is? You might be able to tell by his signature wind up in the picture that's upside down. That is Mr. Juan Marichal. Does anybody know his nickname? There we go. Close enough. Close enough. Congratulations. That's worth a Reggie bar. There you go, sir. Catch. And now I have a signed 1969 Juan Marichal. So it's been a little over 45 years of collecting cards, and I never get bored. I might get broke from time to time, but I am never bored. And my acute OCD is only satisfied by collating and organizing every single card I get as soon as I get it. But in the end, each card I collect and reminisce over is a trip through time, both for the player that once was, eternally on display, and for me, the young fan I was when I discovered their card. Now, let's talk about how my baseball journey involves my Puerto Rican heritage. And we will start here. This is Raul Acosta. He was my maternal grandfather, and he passed away in 2002. And when he passed, my mother asked me to do some research because she mentioned that he used to play semi-professional baseball, so I had to go online and see what I could find. And this was the first I'd ever heard about this because we were not that close, unfortunately. But I did end up finding about a certain team in Puerto Rico called Los Cangrejeros de Santurce, or which is the Santurce Crabbers. Los Cangrejeros is a semi-professional baseball team based out of Santurce, Puerto Rico. They have been in existence since 1939 and have served as a winter baseball destination for U.S. players throughout the years. Just a few of their noteworthy players include Roberto Clemente, surprise, surprise, Willie Mays, Orlando Cepeda, Tony Perez, some guy named Reggie, as well as Negro League legends Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson. In fact, Josh Gibson was on the very first Cangrejeros team where he served as player manager. And if you take a look at the end, that skinny little run, that's my grandfather. That is Raul Acosta. So my grandfather played professional baseball with Josh Gibson. I learned this after he passed. Now, for those of you who don't know, Josh Gibson is a true legend. The stats are not official, but there are those that consider him to be the true home run king. By some estimates, he hit over 800 home runs in the Negro League. And thankfully, in May of 2024, MLB announced that it will start integrating Negro League statistics into its records. And at this time, they're crediting Gibson with the highest single-season batting average of 466 and the third highest career average at 372. And my grandfather played with him. What I eventually learned was that my grandfather, in that ensuing season, broke his pitching arm in a car accident. And so I'm guessing that maybe it might have just been a combination of shame and pain that kept me from knowing this. And, I lament that I didn't get the chance to pester him about playing with Josh Gibson, but I can still take pride in the fact that he had this amazing achievement as a professional baseball player. Now, as I mentioned earlier, baseball to me was always about fitting in. It was about contributing to American society. And to me, the very essence of the history of baseball, and that to me is essentially the history of baseball. So let's take a look at the early 20th century. And for this section, I do need to thank my wife. A while back, she was tinkering with the idea of teaching a class about baseball. And when you're getting ready to teach a class, you have to do lots and lots and lots of research. And in the course of her research, she came across this book, The American Game, Baseball and Ethnicity by Lawrence Baldessaro and Richard A. Johnson from 2002. Now, typically, when we talk about baseball and integration, we talk about Jackie Robinson and breaking the color barrier in 1947, which led to a welcome wave of African-American players. But rarely do we talk about what happened just before then. I mean, it's important to recognize Mr. Robinson and his contemporaries, but what about before? In addition to skin color, we should be also considering ethnicity, creed, other countries of origin. I mean, let's be honest, being a minority in America is very rarely easy. And this book takes a deep dive into the early 20th century explosion of new ball players from various groups of immigrants, including Germany, Ireland, Germany, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Slavic nations, as well as the ensuing integration of African American and Latino players. And it just wasn't about inclusion. If you know anything about baseball and baseball owners, anything to make a buck. So let me read this passage from the book. Ever since athletes of German and Irish descent entered the major leagues in large numbers more than a century ago, the ethnic background of baseball players has fascinated fans and the media. Even before the turn of the century, major league teams were courting ethnic fans. In St. Louis, ads were placed in German language newspapers. In the Polo Grounds, the section of bleachers where Irish fans gathered was known as Burkeville, and in other parks, Irish fans sat in what was known as the Kerry Patches. For professional baseball, the new immigrants meant potential new customers. One way to tap into this market was to put ethnic heroes on the field. In the 1920s, commentators noted the influx of players of Italian and Slavic origins and wondered why there weren't more Jewish players in the big leagues. However, it wasn't until the mid-30s that representatives of the new European immigrants, primarily Italians and Slavs, appeared in the big leagues in numbers that approached their proportion of the total population. The era following World War II saw the most dramatic ethnographic shift with the belated entry of African American ball players. So we're talking about German players like Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth. I don't know if a lot of people know that Babe Ruth not only was German, but spoke fluent German. In fact, Lou Gehrig's parents knew very little English, and whenever they would visit the Yankee clubhouse, Babe Ruth would welcome them and speak to them in German. We have Irish players like Eddie Collins and Big Ed Walsh, Jewish players like Al Rosen and Hank Greenberg, Italian players like Joe DiMaggio and his brothers, and Tony Lazzeri. I find it fascinating that baseball at this time is seen as this ideal. It's seen as the American game. And you have this huge influx of immigrants and children of immigrants who see baseball as a way of fitting in. The idea that if you could contribute to baseball, you were in turn contributing to American society. And yet, they took the game of baseball, they made it entertaining, they made it diverse, and they made it their own. Baseball is ever evolving because it thrives on new players, new groups from every generation to breathe life into the game and to make it their own. So, as we mentioned earlier, Jackie Robinson joined the major leagues in 1947, but does anybody know who the very first Latino in the major leagues was? I had to look this one up myself, so don't worry. The answer is this gentleman, Luis Castro, AKA Judd, AKA Count, played for the Philadelphia A's in April of 1902. This is the first recorded Latino to play in the major leagues. Other early Latino players of note include Armando Marsans, Miguel Gonzalez, and Adolfo Luque. What do we notice about these players? Anybody? That's true, that's true. Well, how about the nicknames? I mean, it can't be Miguel, it's gotta be Mike. It can't be Adolfo, it's gotta be Dolph. I'm pretty sure Armando also went by Manny. And it's funny because it's all about trying to fit in and make them a little more American. A lot of people probably also know that Roberto Clemente's first baseball card had him as Bob. Bob Clemente in right field. Man, that's boring. Now, can anyone guess who was the first Puerto Rican to play Major League Baseball? And no, it wasn't Roberto Clemente. All right, I'd be surprised if anyone knew this one. Again, I had to look this up too. Meet Hiram Bithorn. All right, this is the very first Puerto Rican MLB player, and he played in his first game in April of 1942, 5 years before Jackie Robinson joined the Dodgers. So, not a lot is known about Hiram, which, again, Hiram Bithorn doesn't exactly evoke reverence. It's not Walter Johnson or Wade Boggs or Willie Mays. In fact, I'm going to probably add it to my ongoing list of cool-sounding baseball names, which includes Johnny Walkenfuss, Biff Pokeroba, and Rusty Kuntz. Yeah. All right, don't think too much about that last one. So, what do we know about Hiram? Well, I can tell you that he was signed by the Cubs in September of 1941, made his major league debut in the following April. Hiram was a pitcher, played in 4 seasons over 5 years. He had a career record of 34 and 31 and a career ERA of 3.16. Not too shabby. In fact, in his second big league season, he threw 7 shutouts, which is still a record among Puerto Rican pitchers to this day. But his career was cut short. You see, during his second season, he enlisted in the Navy. And during that time, he inexplicably put on about 30 pounds. And when he tried to return to baseball, he kind of overdid it and ended up developing a sore arm because of all the extra weight on his body. And that wasn't technically the end because there's a little bit of coda. In 1951, he did try to mount a comeback in the Mexican League, but his life was officially cut short when he was murdered by Mexican police in a bar brawl. Not exactly the natural. But he does have his own stadium named after him in Puerto Rico, so that's not too bad. So, how does knowing this help us? Why is this relevant? And in my head, it's usually this annoying voice that says, is this really relevant? Well, that is for you to decide. For me, it's a reminder that history and the history of baseball are unending caverns of stories and people who get lost in some of the unexplored areas. And I think that the more you think you know, the more you really should try to know. Now, since Hiram, the game of baseball has been in the worthy Puerto Rican hands of all-time greats like Roberto Clemente, Roberto Alomar, and Ivan Rodriguez, all Hall of Famers, some guy named Reggie. As a Yankee fan in the 90s and 2000s, I enjoyed watching Bernie Williams and Jorge Posada win multiple championships. We have the catching prowess of the Molina brothers. Can we name all 3? Any? That's one. Jose? Yadier. Again, should be a Hall of Famer. We have Carlos Beltran, who was recently voted in, and he'll be inducted this summer. And nowadays, the game of baseball is in the hands of all-stars like Francisco Lindor and Edwin Diaz, as well as Carlos Correa and Kike Hernandez. Now, to me, to know baseball in America is to know Puerto Rican culture, or at least a significant aspect of it. The lifeblood of baseball is pulsating with my Puerto Rican heritage, along with an ever-growing number of peoples from around the world. I'm proud to be an American, I'm proud to be Puerto Rican, and I'm damn proud to be a baseball fan. And speaking of fandom, another fandom that I am proud of is the movies. Anybody want to take a guess what movie this is from? This movie came out in 2024 and was shooting in downtown Detroit in November of 2022. No, not Batman. Although there is a famous car in that shot. That's a Chevy Nova, the car of Detective Axel Foley. This was Beverly Hills Cop 4. That was a fun day, although Eddie Murphy was not there. So to me, and many others, movies are a mirror to our culture, reflecting who we've been, who we are, and who we can be. You can learn this and much, much more on my podcast, Cinematic Connections, available on Podbean, Apple, and wherever podcasts are available. So earlier, I mentioned that my wife was thinking about putting together a baseball class, but she was really interested in the history of baseball and film because she's a film scholar. And thankfully, I was included in this research, which included watching a lot of classic films about baseball and discovering a few I had never heard of. So, baseball films, what have we seen? Shout them out.
Field of Dreams.
Anything else?
The one with Jimmy Fallon.
The one with Jimmy Fallon? The Natural? Fever Pitch, all right. Okay. Pride of the Yankees, there we go. All right, well, pop quiz. Another quiz, here we go. What is the highest grossing baseball movie at the U.S. box office? Nope. 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 Close, but not. Nope. Nope. 1992. Comedy. Not The Sandlot. True story of women in World War League of Their Own. Highest grossing baseball movie of all time. Yeah. But anyway, now one of the things that I noticed after my wife pointed it out to me was that while baseball denotes a genre of film, within that genre are a number of sub-genres and deeper topics. Not all baseball films are alike. For example, we have the screwball comedy. It happens every spring. That's pretty famous. And then there are these two other ones. We have Rhubarb, which is the story of a owner of a New York baseball team who dies and leaves ownership of the team to their cat. And Ray Milland, who is also in It Happens Every Spring, he plays the PR director who creates this campaign around the idea that the cat is good luck. And surprise, surprise, the team goes on a winning streak. Then we also have Kill the Umpire, which despite the violent title is actually a screwball comedy. It's about a gentleman who is really dedicated to watching every baseball game he can watch and scream, kill the umpire, until he himself goes to umpire school and becomes an umpire because that's all he knows how to do. We also have famous biography picks in baseball. Baseball and women, we mentioned A League of Their Own. I don't know if anyone's familiar with 1983's Blue Sky Again. It's a story of a young woman who is trying to join the major leagues. It features Harry Hamlin, Mimi Rogers, and in one of his very first performances on screen, Andy Garcia. And this film is notable for me because the actress who stars is named Robin Bartow, and I just think she looks like Caitlin Clark, so I just feel like that's pretty apropos to what's going on today. We have Baseball and Race. We have Bingo Long and the Traveling All-Stars. We have Soul of the Game, which told the story of Jackie Robinson, Satchel Paige, and Josh Gibson in sort of the last few weeks leading up to who would get the call to be playing in the majors. Baseball and Economics. I mean, I know 8 Men Out is really about the Black Sox scandal, but it really is about economics when you think about it, as well as what a horrible person William Kinniski was. We have Baseball and Myth. Did anyone actually read The Natural? Are they familiar with what the actual ending of The Natural was supposed to be?
He strikes out.
That is true. In the actual book, Roy Hobbs strikes out, and not only does he strike out, he dies at home plate, still hemorrhaging from that 20-year-old gunshot wound. Yeah. You know what? I think we're going to need Redford to hit a 600-foot home run. I think that'll work a little better for the box office. So, yeah. We have Baseball and Kids, Baseball and Fandom, and then my personal favorite, Baseball and the Lovable Losers. I connect to this one a lot because it really is, and it strangely enough, it may be the most realistic of all of these because to me, it's the essence of baseball. It's about that ragtag group of people who hate each other. Okay, they're a bunch of rebels, but you put them together on the same team. They've got one goal, and they can win the championship. Not unlike the 1978 Yankees. Now, I'm sure there's a lot more I could say about baseball and film, but that would require a lot more research, and I haven't done that. And I also didn't want to waste your time with a bunch of film clips. That's a good one. But I did want to include.
By the way, in 1987, we thought that was science fiction.
I bet. But I did want to include this last topic because there's something here that kind of brings everything that I've been talking about together. And that is baseball as the ultimate meritocracy. You know, I've talked a lot about inclusion and heritage and what it means to play baseball, but in the end, talent wins out. I mean, we can all enjoy the game of baseball as a fan, but if you want to play and really contribute, you've got to have the skills from the get-go. And I think this may be best summed up from 2005's Fever Pitch. For those who haven't seen it, it's a story of a truly lifelong diehard Red Sox fan, played charmingly by Jimmy Fallon. He meets and falls in love with Drew Barrymore and tries to navigate this burgeoning romance with his love for the Sox. And it's set against the backdrop of the 2004 season, which I'd really rather not talk about ever. But there is this one scene where Fallon is explaining what he truly loves about the game. He says, "You know what's great about baseball? You can't fake it. You know, anything else in life, you don't have to be great in. Business, music, art. I mean, you can get lucky and you can fool people for a while, but not baseball. You can either hit a curveball or you can't. That's the way it works." So, aside from the film's blatant pro-Red Sox agenda, it has a point. Baseball is based on skill, talent, and most importantly, it's based on truth. The legends of the game may make it look easy, but they play the game with skill, passion, and heart. They earn their spot in the lineup and their place on the field. And despite what the current political discourse may express, diversity is a good thing. Here we have, oh, thank you. Here we have the 1971 Pirates. But does anybody know what they did significantly on September 1st, 1971? There we go, that's my man. This is the very first lineup of all Black and Latino players. And guess what? They won the World Series that year. The history of baseball is teeming with diversity. And diversity is not a dirty word. Diversity is good. Diversity is right. Diversity works. The more diverse the game is, the more talent that there is on display, and the more fans like me have to enjoy, even when my team loses. Thank you very much. Okay, well, that's kind of all I had to say, but we got some time, so if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. Yes, sir.
I was just recently telling my daughter, who inherited love of baseball from me, and I'm a diehard Yankee fan like you, and from that era, Thurman Munson was my greatest player. I was just recently telling her the story of the Reggie Bar, and how opening day, when the Reggie Bar first came out.
And that was in 1978, right?
Yes, and he hit a home run, and they gave him out at the baseball game, so everyone had one. And when he hit that home run, everyone threw him on the field. Stopped the game to clean up all the Reggie Bars.
And the second part of that was, I believe it was Catfish Hunter who said, "Thank God it wasn't Bat Day."
Yeah. So I'm curious, who's making them, and where did you find them?
This is a company called Econo Candy. Econo Candy. And obviously, if you even just do a Google search, there's probably a few companies that do it, but if you just literally do a search for Reggie bars, don't go to eBay because some of those people actually have the original bars. You don't want those. But certain companies have the rights to recreate them, and they're surprisingly they're almost like the ones I had when I was a kid. I mean, they're a little expensive, but it's worth it.
I was just going to say that my first experience, a real first experience in baseball was, I was 10 years old in 1945, and I saw the Tigers play the Cubs. And I think it was the first game, Claude Passo for the Cubs pitched a one-hitter, and Rudy York got the only hit.
Wow, those are the days.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot of one-hitters nowadays.
Yeah, I've been at 3 Tigers fantasy games.
Oh, that's awesome. I've never done one of those. You know, I don't know why, but the older I get, I feel like I'm getting more and more to the point where, yeah, I don't want to be the out-of-shape guy at the fantasy camp. You know, I got to work out before I can earn the fantasy camp. But yeah, that's just me. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I think you also have to stress the value of a baseball card is also on the condition of the card. And it's so unique. I used to have very valuable cards. I thought they were really valuable, but if there was a nick here or a nick there, you lost the value. There are very few cards that are in excellent condition.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, it's funny how as a kid, all I ever wanted to do was play with the cards. And in fact, I used to have this game called Dice Baseball, where I would play and have the lineups in my hand and roll dice. And then as I got older, I realized, no, you're putting too much wear of the card, put them away. And then, as my wife can attest, as soon as I get a card, I will look at it very quickly, right into the book, right into the plastic. We don't touch that ever again because we don't want to mess that up.
In your presentation, you had a picture of the back of a Mantle, Mickey Mantle. Is that your card?
I wish. No, that's just an image I pulled from. That's just an image I pulled from the World Wide Web. Like I said, I mean, again, the oldest card I probably have is that Billy Martin from '57, and again, I have a few Yankees from the '60s, but yeah, I don't have any. Again, even if I had a Mantle card, I wouldn't have it because I would immediately sell it and pay off my house. So that's kind of the way I roll. I love you, Mickey, but come on, times are tight. Any other questions? Yes, you in the back.
Have you ever been tempted to collect any other kind of card? Since it's become so popular, I think of baseball cards as kind of like the original, right? But now everything has a card.
This is true. I was actually talking about this before the talk. I've recently trying to dip my toe into the world of Pokemon cards, not so much because I care anything, but because they are apparently very, very lucrative. I was recently watching a program where they had a gentleman who was having his cards evaluated, and he had this one card that he had bought about 10 years ago for $200. And apparently this card was so rare that 10 years later, it's literally worth $100,000. So I'm starting to think of cards as like the ultimate lottery ticket. So again, I'm always gonna collect baseball cards, but I am going to see what I can find in Pokemon and maybe get lucky here and there, so.
My cousin just sold one for $4,000.
See, there you go.
Which is nuts.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Similarly, not on outside of baseball cards, but actually kind of on the opposite end of that spectrum. Instead of getting the big boxes, have you mentioned that you're looking to complete sets more and buy the cards that you're more interested in. Have you thought about, instead of buying the big boxes, of maybe just doing that, of just buying more targeted? Or is it really that you just love getting that big box, or what is it?
It's a little both. Again, I'm trying to slowly wean myself off of buying the new cards, because I'll be honest, the newer cards, they just don't have the same personality as they used to. Or again, the newer cards, it's so easy. Every picture is an action picture. And on a lot of the newer cards, they cut short the stats. They will literally show you only the players like last 5 years. Like, no, I want to see all the stats. But I do that, but also there's a couple of stores I go to. One is Luton Cards in Clawson. It's at 14 in Maine. And he has a lot of collection of older cards, and I will go in there from time to time, and I do have these lists that I have of certain cards, and most of what I'm trying to fill in is stuff from the 70s and 80s. And he's got these, boxes of like, 10 cents for this one, or 25 cents for this one, or $1 for this one. So I try to fill in that way. And then also during the pandemic, I started shopping for baseball cards on eBay, and I found some. And again, it was that thing of, you first start doing it and this is way too good to be true. And no, there is a really nice community of card sellers on eBay that you can trust, and they'll show you the card. This is what it looks like. This is what it's going to cost, and you can get it in the mail. So that was something I've done. So I'm doing a little bit of both. Any other questions? All right, well, I thank you all very much for your time. I apologize that the Red Wings are playing tonight. I do hope this was somewhat entertaining, and I'll hang out here for a little bit if anyone else has any questions or memories they'd like to share. Thank you.